And for months, we have covered Ohio's struggles to come up with a redistricting map. It's an expensive, chaotic political mess. And a week from today, a federal court might decide those political lines. Why should that matter to you? Well, the map will decide who you get to represent you in Columbus. And that might change in an instant next week. So who are the people making the redistricting decisions? News Center 7's John Bedell has some answers.
I want to quickly catch you up on what this whole redistricting thing is. The state of Ohio has to redraw its state house maps every decade using the latest census data. And how we do that here in Ohio has changed. In 2015, voters approved a whole new process that involves a 7-person, bipartisan Ohio Redistricting Commission. They're responsible for drawing the lines. The commission is made up of the governor, secretary of state, and auditor of state, plus 4 state lawmakers, 1 Republican and 1 Democrat from both the House and the Senate. Right now, that's Governor Mike DeWine, Secretary of State Frank LaRose, and State Auditor Keith Faber. They're all Republicans. The 2 GOP state lawmakers are House Speaker Bob Cupp from Lima and Senate President Matt Huffman, whose district includes much of the northern Miami Valley. The 2 Democrat state lawmakers on the commission are State Senator Vernon Sykes from Akron and House Minority Leader Allison Russo from the Columbus area. In this current makeup, Republicans have a 5-2 majority on this commission. Right now, the process is on hold because so far, the Ohio Supreme Court has tossed out 3 sets of maps, ruling they favor Republicans too strongly. The maps were supposed to be in place for this year's election cycle, but that hasn't happened yet. So now, Ohio House and Senate candidates are not on the May 3rd primary ballot, which means there will need to be another election, possibly in August, and that's estimated to cost Ohio taxpayers $20 million. Reporting in studio, I'm John Bedell, News Center 7.